Welcome back, everybody. We have two sessions left for this year, for this spring's Member Appreciation Day. Thanks for hanging out with us today on this Friday. I want to introduce our next presentation, which is, again, just like the Independent Accountant Alliance and then our Coaching Collaborative, is another member-led group, our Technology User Group. We call it TUG. You can see Jim Gilbert here. He is chair of that group. He's also incoming chair of the CPA for the board. But TUG is sort of his baby. I would call it, Jim. That's your baby, right?
Yeah.
We now have a team of members sort of helping chair that group. And so they are doing just like the IAA, hosting monthly calls to talk about tech. And then they just did their first in-person one on tech stacks. I think that was really successful. So looking to do some more of those. So if you're interested in being part of that group, being on the calls, I'll post my information again in the chat. You can reach out to me by email and we'll get you hooked up to that group. Today, we're going to talk about spreadsheet risk analysis, best practices for CPA professionals. I have Pat Reilly here. So I don't know I think a lot of you know about Verifile, our partnership with Verifile, which is a free member benefit for secure messaging and unlimited document signing. I'll throw that up in the chat as well if you're not familiar with it. I think we have over almost 600 members using Verifile now because it's free, comes with your membership. Company called Incisive, sort of a spinoff from Verifile. It's just this really cool program for checking and finding errors in Excel spreadsheets. And so we're going to sort of talk about just finding things in Excel spreadsheets and best practices. We'll probably mention Incisive. We have a special arrangement with them, so I'll share that in the chat as well. But Pat Reilly's here today to talk about spreadsheet risk analysis and best practices. Pat's held various leadership positions for over 40 years. That means you might be older than me, Pat. I'm sorry to say, but you probably are. At high-tech firms, he was vice president of sales and vice president of sales and marketing for 6 companies that ended in acquisition by other companies. In his role, he drove the expansion and repeatability of sales at companies that were sold to Thales, SAIC, Cisco, Tyco, WatchGuard, and Oracle. So he's got lots and lots of great experience in working with companies and their needs. And so, Pat, I'm going to turn it over to you and Jim.
All right. Thanks, Daryl. So I've invited, you all know, I think you know Jim, but I've invited him to correct me where I go wrong or add color where color needs to be added. So he's the color commentator.
That's right.
I'm the broadcast. So I think you can see my slides. So basically what I figured I'd go through today is I guess I'll start off by scaring you all. Saying that, you're putting out spreadsheets that have errors in it. I guarantee it. I'll bet anybody money on that one. So that's sort of the beginning, is saying, well, why is that important? And then what I wanted to do is go through the process of what are the different kinds of errors. And I'll go through what we call the silent errors, and I'll go through the ones that are noisy, meaning Excel yells at you when you do those errors. So we'll do those things. But before I get rolling, and then I guess finish with 2 last things, I'm going to show you a manual way to deal with making sure you don't have those errors. And then you're going to have to put up with a 3-minute, I guess it's a 3-minute commercial. I'll show you how there's an automated way that we have software that you can actually use, and you just punch the button and it runs all those tests that I'll be talking about to do that. And as Daryl said, you guys get a very good deal. This inexpensive software for you to be able to do that. What I wanted to say, and I think we're putting it up into the chat, is I actually have put together, I'll call it either speaker's notes, because I'll be using some of this to support what I'm talking to you about. The other way to think about, though, it's sort of the cheat sheets. It's actually going to go through, and if I talk about there's a way that you can do something, I don't want to go through step by step by step. But what I have put together is basically a white paper that goes through and gives you all the step by step by step. So if you go, wow, he said something interesting, I don't know how to do that. You can go on the chat, and in there will be, I think it's in there somewhere,
Yeah,
but
it's the Google Drive link.
Yeah, Tiffany threw it in the chat. So that's Pat put together sort of a worksheet, how to
There we go.
document that I think all of you will really find value in. So thank you, Pat.
yeah. All right, so let me just jump into the scary part, and then we'll get to the meat of this. So, if you look at this, basically, as I said, this is the thing that amazed me is you start looking into it. Basically, they say every cell has something like close to 1 to 5% of where you have problems in that cell. So there's errors of some sort. And the thing that's interesting about that, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this front part, is some of you probably are doing fairly large spreadsheets and maybe working with teams. Well, guess what? Now you're on usually the 5% side of where the error rates are as opposed to the 1% side. So it really comes through that, you look at that, and in some of the large spreadsheets talks about hundreds of potential problems that are going to be going on within your spreadsheets. And so, like I said, what I now want to do is go through and where do we find most of those errors and go through that element. What I'll do is probably about every 4 or 5 slides, I'll stop and take a breath and then see if there's anything in chat that we want to address. So if Jim, you or Daryl could help me there, that'd be wonderful. So, why do we say that's important? So first of all, as it says here, as you work with teams, and you all do, you're getting information from your customer, you're working with it, maybe others in the firm are working with it. So that becomes just a way to compound those errors, as it says. And then the often part of this thing that I talked about, a lot of these things can be invisible. You don't know they're errors. There's just no way that Excel notifies you that something bad is going on. And the last part, that what you care about is you signed off on results, reports, et cetera, et cetera. Guess what? If there's things in here that are in some way undermining the veracity of what you signed off on, that shows up on you and potentially even has financial implications on you and your customers. So let's go through it. Let's start. So, like I said, I've got 3 levels of things. One is what I'm going to show on the slide, which is just a veneer level, if you will. What I'll do here in the presentation, since we only have another 40 so minutes or so, I'm going to go a step or so down in that. But then what I put into the attachment in the document is actually step by step by step. So if you need the cookbook that says, well, how do you do what he just said? You actually have that in this presentation as well. So the first, which you probably all have done, is it's what they're called reference cell errors. And basically what it is, you take a reference cell, you copy it and move it into a next cell. And, let's say that you've got a price list of products, and in a column B of that thing is a tax rate, let's say. So you then begin to say, okay, well, this is the item and here's the tax rate. And then you start saying, okay, I want to multiply that down the rest of the rest of that whole column. Well, guess what? As it goes to the next thing, it took where you had the tax rate, let's say that was in an H1 cell, if you will, it now puts in H2. Well, now you're screwed because there's probably a 0 in H2. And so there's a thing that basically calls an absolute reference. And what you're allowed to do is to lock in what you want one of the cells to then be used for every other cell down that row. And the only magic to that is when you're doing the equal B2 times whatever it is you can multiply, you put a dollar sign in front of it. And basically what that does is now that locks that in, so that as you begin to document that there or in other cells or in other copies, it's always going to show the right number to do that. The next one is formula errors, and this is pretty simple because most of these things, this is the one that Excel yells at you. You know, it says divide by 0, etc. It shows you that it's a value, it's a name, it's got the problem. There's ways to talk about fixing that, and I'll get through that in a minute, which if you put that in place, if you ever do have those errors, it allows you to actually, I don't want to say not care about it, but it actually can self-regulate taking care of doing that. And the last thing is what they call an emission, data emission. So you're sitting there, like I said, this example says here that you wanted to sum a column from the second item in that column down to 50. And so somewhere you got the sum as the second item to 50. Well, somebody comes along and adds 3 more items. Well, your total isn't going to change because it thinks it's still going from sum of 2 to 50. And so there's a way to do that with a brilliant thing. If you get nothing from this, there's a basically it's a capability with Excel that you create an Excel table. And what that does is it actually makes it that as you add or subtract things from that column or sets of columns, it automatically makes it inclusive of the changes up or down as you go through it. So, as I said, these are usually things that you can find. You know, usually Excel is pretty good at complaining when you do these things. So let me do my first breath. Are there any comments and questions? If not, I'll keep rolling in.
Not yet, Pat. Not yet. I'm sure.
Yeah, those are the easy ones, is why you're wasting my time telling me this. So I apologize for that. Let's get to where it kind of begins to get a little interesting. Is obviously you're doing things to say, do I want the, do I want the mean? Do I want the average? Do I want, what is it that I want? And so one of the things that you can go through is there is a way to check your formulas. And to me, I was mentioning earlier, I do some things with spreadsheets where I do have to evaluate a formula. So I'm going to not go through that in detail here. But there is, at the top of your Excel spreadsheet, there's a formulas tab. You can click on that, and there's actually a way to look at how you can evaluate it. And so again, you can look at that, and what it can do is it can actually show you kind of the dialog box of that formula, as well as even pointers as to what's the information that came up with that. And so you can, like I said, step by step, and I've got this in the write-up that can go through that, is to see, do I have any issues in there? Or if you've got something that says I've got an error, where in your formula is that error? So this will actually show you that part on that cell in that sheet is the thing that's causing the problem, that's showing you the error that you've got. So that's a big tool that I'd highly recommend. If you haven't ever checked formula errors, you absolutely should be doing that. The other one is hard coding. So you go through and let's say again you're doing a tax thing, and so you say the tax is, let's say, 5%. So again, one of the ways you can do that is you can hit the first cell and then take it to the second and the third, and 200 cells later, you got 5%. Well, if now next year that goes to 6%, there are ways to not have to do that. And this is probably one of the ones that if you're not doing this, shame on you, because this is a simple one. Basically, what you do is you basically dedicate an assumption cell and use that as the, if you will, the parameter that you're then going to place in the rest of it. So instead of, the first cell has this times a number, it has this times the output of that exception cell. So you can change that to 0.06 next year. And guess what? You just changed everything on your entire Excel document to the right kind of format. Again, if you're not doing that, shame on you. That's probably one of the more simple things that we can do. Another one of these, which is interesting, again, it's another tool inside Excel, is that basically you put in the wrong thing. Like you say, you want to have somebody give a 5% bonus. You're going to give somebody a 0.5%. So you go in there and you put 0.5. Well, guess what? Excel doesn't know 0.5 as a percentage, probably, unless you told it. So it's going to give somebody a 50% bonus. Well, if you're the employee getting that, pretty cool. If you're the guy that's paying it, not so good. So basically, what you can do is, again, up at the top of Excel, there's a data tab. And again, you can click on that to basically say data validation. And again, I won't go through that, but it will look at what you put in there, say it can't be any greater than, let's say, 0.01 to 0.1. So if something comes in at 0.5, it's going to give you an error that is not a good input that can be put into it. So again, when you have very sensitive areas that might have errors that could have a significant material impact, I highly recommend you use the data validation aspect of this, especially if you're sharing this with others. And like you said, somebody fat fingers something that could have a dramatic impact of it. Should I take a breath or keep rolling?
Pat, there might be a question for Michelle. I'm trying to see if she's got a question here, but this is a great tool that you're going through, and you're going through some good stuff. What does this apply to? Does this apply to anybody and everybody that's in accounting, no matter what kind of job you have? Does this logic that you're going through, is this where do you see this apply for accountants overall?
Yeah, no, let me be back to your question. This applies to doing Excel spreadsheets. So if you do Excel spreadsheets for anything, whether I was kiddingly talking about, I checked out some of these things because I'm in the Rotary,
Right.
and I run a cake and pie baking contest, and my judges sometimes screw up. So I put in validations, and I use these tools for just checking out, did the judge do what their job was, or did they use the same thing twice? You're not allowed to use that same number twice. So,
Yeah.
so this is for anything, like I said, and the bigger the better. But this is for anything.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right. So the other thing comes down to inconsistent formulas. So again, you start using, 8 times B, but then somewhere in there you went, oh, but that one's a little different, so I need to add a number or something. So all of a sudden you do a one-time thing somewhere, and you don't realize that what you just did was you actually now changed the entire table potentially forever. And so there is an amazing capability within Excel that I want to, if you don't know about it, again, it's another one of these what were they thinking? Thank goodness they did this. It's called an Excel table. And what you're able to do is basically look at something within the table. So you can go down a column, look at a set of cells, however you do it. You click on that, those blocks, if you will. And instead of hitting just adding something new, you do it. There's a shortcut on your keyboard, which it's either Control T for Windows or Command T for a Mac. But basically, it basically said, what's the data for your table? So you come through and you say, well, here's the data. It asks you, do you have headers? And yeah, you say, this is the header, this is what it's called. But then what it's able to do is you actually can fill in the first cell of that data and begin to put that, and it now begins to call it, rather than, again, cell talk, it's not A2, B2, it's going to look at things like what you named it. So that's the quantity, and this is the price, for example. And so what it does is every single row and column now, it's going to show it in that. And the nice thing is it comes back, instead of saying things like A2 and B2 and things like that, it's going to say price and quantity. So if someone comes along later and says, what am I looking at here? Oh, this is price times quantity. I know exactly what this is versus, you're the guy that made up the spreadsheet, and I now have no clue how you got to the numbers that you got to. So again, there's ways to do it. It will make it that it is highly consistent with what you set up as the first way to go through it. So if anything changes from that, again, it gives you errors and says you can't do that unless you, I don't want to say break the rule, but you then have changed the rule. And what it will do though, next time it will come back to where you defaulted. The next one of this is copying and pasting. And again, this is where you're doing a lot of working with others. The thing that you should always use is basically it's a paste special instead of just a paste. Because oftentimes what we might end up doing is you take the number, you move it over there. You know what you really meant to take was the formula that gave you that number. And so that's one of the things that happens a lot is you're either preserving the value or the formula. And so when you go through this, I don't want to say don't be lazy, but it's typical that we just say, oh, that cell, move it over here. Well, if you take that cell, do one last step just to verify, yeah, I want that number. That's going to be forever what I do. Or no, I actually wanted the formula because that now can change as a result of activities with the spreadsheet. All right, let me take a breath. Questions?
Nothing yet.
All right.
No.
Now we're gonna get into the.
Now we get some harder stuff, right?
Here we go. So this is how you fix this stuff. So again, this is where the next, I think it's 2 or 3 slides. So I talk about one is structure. The next slide is going to go through and talk about logic, and then the last one is data. And so basically, what I highly recommend, and I'll go through, like I said, kind of briefly through some of these things now, but in the document that's in the spreadsheet, or excuse me, in the presentation here, I've called this out completely. So when it talks about how do you do structure, integrity, there's a way, again, a way to do this, which I don't think I'm going to go through in any detail here. Excuse me, there's a control, and there's that little weird thing below the escape key on your computer. As I put that in here, it basically goes through and actually can begin to look at, do I have are the numbers within the correct format, the correct way they should be shown, et cetera, et cetera. So basically it goes through and allows you to begin to look at what are the numbers I've used and how do I audit that I've done that. So it will go through and again, it will look to look at, are things out of line from this or not, based on the what you've put in the cells around that cell that you are looking at. Again, I could go through this. This is 2 pages in my document. I'm not going to go through 2 pages in the document, but there is a way to make sure that as you're putting hard-coded numbers in, that they are going through and doing it appropriately. And pretty much the same is for the sums. It's being able to look at things to, there's a way to, it's basically your F2 key, or you can look at the total of that cell, and it will go through and look at are there things that are omitted. So it goes through and actually looks at where you pulled the information from, the source information, and now what you're going through and making sure that you've included everything there. So it actually has this, again, another Excel thing. There's a little kind of green, I forgot if it's green or blue, but I think it says blue, yeah. So it shows you a little color-coded thing. You can click on that, and it will show you that do I need to add these into the assumptions or the sums that are there. So there's ways to validate the whole set of that. Hidden data, this is real simple. I think everybody knows this. When you click at the top left of your Excel spreadsheet and you just hit the unhide, because oftentimes you might find out that you've got rows and columns and sheets that you didn't even know existed. And so this is a pretty simple thing to go through to look at that, to make sure that, data that you got actually is coming from somewhere, and that you know where that data is coming from so that you can go through it. So just hit the unhide button and you're able to look at it, to look at all of that. And then the last thing is the error flags. And so again, there is a capability within Excel itself that allows you to go up and see what the heck is going on with the errors that you're getting from that. So you can go up again to the very top of your Excel spreadsheet, and you can go to a tool that's up there that's under the formulas, and there's an errors box underneath that. Clicking on that, it actually goes through and begins to show you what the errors are. It takes you right to those cells, lights them up, so you can actually see what in the formula is broken or what's going on. And it allows you to actually then clean those things. So, for example, let's say, I don't know, you're doing something and all of a sudden it's trying to divide by 0. You're looking at stock and you don't have anything of that stock. So, it's doing price of stock. So it's doing price and it's trying to figure out how to do that with a 0. Well, what you can actually do is there's, again, a feature under this that after you've done what I just said, instead of just doing the, let's say number divided by something else, what you can do is you can say equals, and then you write if error, and then put in the function that you want to check, comma, but after that you say if it is 0, because I have no stock, then you actually put in a 0. And what it will do, it will no longer show you an error for that division by 0. It will show you 0. And so you're able to do this for anything. You can put in any formulas that you want and any outputs, so that you hardwire that those outputs actually do take the changes that you are, and you aren't showing all the errors that you've got. All right. Questions?
All right, got a question here. Do you turn on all your ranges into tables then, or just in specific cases?
I would do it where they are, I don't know what words to use, but are consequential for things. Because it's not a lot of setup, but it takes an extra step to set it up as a table. But when you've got something that is significant, that's going to be, again, you're kind of putting your name on the document, or it's going to have a material impact, then absolutely you should do that. And, so I guess it's user discretion is maybe the short answer to that. That there are places that go through it, but there are places that you don't. It's a way cleaner area. If you do a lot of work with Teams, I probably would recommend you err on using it, because then people know what you did. It's kind of like debugging software. What were they thinking? I don't know. Well, now this comes out and tells you that.
Okay. Thank you, Pat.
Okay, so the last part of this thing is kind of manual logic in that. So this starts with finding out where did things come from. So basically, it can go through and look at, and this is how you do it. You hit your alternate and NP key. And what it will do is it will show you the sources. So it will actually trace the sources. So you can actually do it that way, or you can actually go up to the formula again on the top of the Excel spreadsheet, and this is in your document. So you can pull out and actually look at formulas. There's a down select that's called trace precedences. And you can actually even ask it to put arrows in. So it's really cool. It shows you, here's what you came up with as your final result. And it came from these places. And here's the arrows that got you to there. And if you click that one more time, it says, and here's the arrows that got you to that. So you can sit there and go back almost in time in history as to where did that information come from to begin with. So again, it's really a nice way to see, am I getting things from something, and does it make sense what I'm using to do that? Again, another hidden capability within Excel is to look at what I'll call formula, basically uniformity, I guess, to make sure that things above and below whatever you just did are not out of the ordinary, or are fitting up with the pattern of what's going up above and below. And so there again is a way under the Excel at the top. You can go through special. Again, you can click on things to look at row differences or column differences. And what it will do is it actually goes through and shows you something that's out of sync with whatever else is in that row or that column. And again, then you can click on that and change it and then run it again to make sure that nothing has changed dramatically. So it becomes a very nice way to find out if you've somehow have broken some pattern, if you will, to that. Next one is, when you're coming up and trying to do numbers and somebody types in the word 9 instead of the number 9, oftentimes those things just don't get added in, or they become they may show up as an error if you hit one of the earlier things that I talked about as far as Excel looking for out of the ordinary in any column or row. But what you're able to do, there's a number of ways to deal with that. First of all, is you can go through and actually look at a scan of that column or that row. And basically, again, you will see there's those little green triangles that will see things that are text as opposed to, a number of some sort. So again, at least do a visual review and click on any of those to make sure. And there is a way Excel even allows you to convert to numbers, so it will know the word 9 is a 9, and it can do that for you. Or you type in the word 9 and get rid of the thing that was there beforehand. Breath time. Questions?
All right, I've got another one. Let's see. The question is, I've always used tables. Also prevents issues when you add column to a filtered data set, but forget to extend your filters. Adding data to a column besides a table automatically extends the table to include the new column, and then extends the filtering to the new column, so your data doesn't get mismatched. More of a comment than anything.
That's beautiful. Wherever that is, you get the gold star for the MVP for the day.
Hey, Megan's got the gold star. Yeah, you bet.
All right, good job, Megan.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. That's why, like I said, probably most people don't know that exists, and it's such a foolproof. Thanks, Megan. You nailed it.
Yeah.
All right, last couple of these things is just looking at the data. So basically, there is another thing that you can do, and this takes a little work, but if you're bringing in totals, so let me give you an example. I put this in the spreadsheet. Let's say you're taking an ERP database and you got 50 invoices and you're dragging that into Excel. Well, what you can do on the ERP system is actually do a checksum. And so what it will do is it will look at all 50 of those things and it will run it up to do a checksum, even if those are numbers and quantities, dates, whatever it is, and it will give you a number. And then what you can do is you can bring that into your Excel spreadsheet. And again, there is a way to do a checksum, if you will, and it will give you then the ability to say, okay, is that number of what I had in my ERP spreadsheet the same, or ERP listing, the same as what I pulled into this? So if the checksums are the same, then you did the job right. You can be assured that an error isn't in what you rolled over. The other is test cases, and this, like I said, I'm going to let you read this because this is actually 2 pages in the document. Basically, it says try the corner cases. So look at things like if it was a 0, what does that do? If it's 10,000, what does that do? So if something comes in a 0 and all of a sudden you're getting errors because it's showing you're trying to divide by 0, well, those are things that you better fix and put that if error thing that I talked about error earlier, saying that if it is an error, then actually put a 0 in as opposed to giving me a division error that I've got. So there's ways that we go through, and again, you can go through there that says identify where there are issues with those boundary cases, and then show me where there's errors in those boundary cases. And so typically you put in a very extreme high number, which may give you issues because of what it's doing. And then it may give you an error because of what it's trying to do. And the last thing here is to look at your links. And as I said earlier, there is a way that Excel allows you to do that. There's a data up in the data tab. There's actually a pull down for edit links, and it's in the queries connections area. You go to queries and connections, and you pull that thing down, and what it will show you is where all the links are. Or where there are issues with links that you've got. And again, it will show you that and allows you to then fix any and all of the links that are inappropriate.
Okay.
All right. So like I said, there's what I call the loud and the silent. So this is what Excel captures. So they'll do things, but what they won't do is this. And this is probably back to the scare you mode. There's been some amazing problems with people making these things. I'm not going to read these. You can read as well as I. You probably all remember JP Morgan. Some guy made an Excel spreadsheet deal that ended up bringing in a $6.2 billion loss. Hopefully none of this call are ever living that. And it's exactly what we talked about it earlier. They didn't adjust for new data, and so they didn't put it into tables. And so, as Angus said, there's a way to fix that. And again, hidden rows, and as it says here, it's a minus sign. So there are things that just look for consistency, looking for hidden, and looking for out of boundary information that you missed. The thing that's interesting, so obviously you can do all those things, and I gave you the cheat sheet so you can do all of that. But there's a couple of things that we find, and this is not by my company, this is by another, is there's confirmation bias. Since we own the spreadsheet, we want it to be right. And so oftentimes we just sort of zip by what we missed. And then again, what we find is somebody reviewing your data, as it says here, it's only about half the time does it actually do something. And then the other part of it is a lot of these things are invisible, so you wouldn't even know that it's an error. How can you tell? So is there a tool? Okay, bear with me for the 3 minutes. Here. There is a tool that you guys have access to from us. It's called Accelerator, and it's a spreadsheet auditing and error detection platform. And let me show you.
Accelerator helps you identify errors, mitigate risks, and gain valuable insights into your spreadsheet structure. Start by opening your workbook and navigating to the Incisive tab. There, you will find the Accelerator menu. In the Accelerator options, You can choose from 64 pre-built tests across categories such as formula errors, risks, hidden, informational, and you can even create your own tests under the Custom tab. Once you're ready, click on Start Accelerator. Accelerator will immediately scan and analyze your workbook using the selected tests. Upon completion, the results summary will show number of tests ran, total results found, and cell count triggered per test. You can conveniently export these results into a summary report for easy sharing with your team. Accelerator's patented overlay feature will highlight any cells or ranges flagged by your selected tests. On the right, in the task pane, you'll see a list of the tests and results from the Accelerator scan. You can click on any result to be taken directly to the corresponding cell or range, making the process quick and efficient. Switch your view from the current test view to structure view to gain deeper insights into the worksheet's structure. Formulas and data are grouped together to highlight any inconsistencies among data and cell ranges. For example, you might notice that E14 is not grouped with the adjacent cells, suggesting that there might be formula inconsistencies. Additionally, when you see a blue overlay on certain cells, it indicates they are cell references related to your current cell selection. For a closer look at these references, click the Hold button. This will keep the blue overlay visible on those cells. After examining them, you can switch back to Test View. To review and validate the test results, select the cell you wish to modify and make the necessary changes based on the recommendations. After making your changes, click Rescan to validate them. You'll know the error is resolved when the overlay disappears and it no longer appears in the task pane on the right. You can continue making changes throughout the workbook and perform a rescan at any point to track your progress. Once you are done, just click Stop Accelerator. Diff Interactive allows you to compare your open workbook to another workbook, a snapshot, or even sheet to sheet. Diff Interactive offers comparison modes to help you detect structural changes, as well as any differences in cell values and formulas. Simply select your Compare Against option and your desired comparison mode, and then click Compare. You'll see an overlay similar to Accelerator, which highlights all changes found between your working copy and the original workbook, making identification straightforward. The task pane on the right will also show any differences in cell values, calculated values, formulas, and formula references. You can click to identify these cells easily. You'll also see differences such as modified, removed, or new sheets listed, along with any named range differences and changes involving columns and rows, like those inserted, deleted, hidden, unhidden, or moved. Just like with Accelerator, you can modify any of these cells and perform a rescan to see how your new changes compare.
So if you ever do anything that is quarterly, monthly, this is invaluable because it's going to tell you exactly what's different from what you're doing now versus what happened in the past. And you can look back in time to do that.
Accelerator help.
All right. So I guess the wrap is, stuff happens, as they say. And so there are ways that you can mechanically do it with the Excel spreadsheets as they do. There's ways to do it, again, manually. And then there are ways that you can do this automatically. And the final of this, if you guys want, we'll let you have it for free for a while. Eventually, if you see it's worth something, then again, you've got a deal to do that as well. But you can go to this link and anybody can use our product for free. So if you got some stuff coming up and you want to just abuse the relationship, go for it. We'll let you do that.
Right. Pat, I think there's at least one or two more questions. Does the Accelerator, does it work with Google Sheets?
Currently not. So what we do is we end up bringing the documents into Excel. This is actually an add-on inside Excel. So you'd have to do a save as or download as, which that's usually what I end up doing.
Okay, sounds good. There was one thing about Excel. One person said, I have problems with being able to change whole long columns that have cells of text as numbers into pure numbers. Do you have something like that in your document that help people converting from
Yeah,
text to
so
numbers?
where was that? So there actually is, where is it? Hold on a second. Yeah, so inside, so I don't know if you've tried it, but if you go to, again, to my document, there's an identified text as numbers, and it talks about an actionable fix. So it says that uh, hit the cell that has the issue that you want to change. And what then comes in, there is a way that you can click on, right click to convert to a number. And then it basically does that. Alternatively, find an empty cell somewhere. This is the other kind of very manual fix. But what you can do is go find an empty cell, insert that number, and then do this paste special and click that back into the cell that you want to change up. So there's a manual only, and then Excel has a bit of a cheat for you as well.
Looks like Daryl, and looks like the QR code says it's deactivated. So can
I
we?
will make sure that that's not deactivated.
Yeah. So we got a couple of people excited about using it, and it looks like there's a couple anxious
Let me
Excel
I have
users.
found our members like the word free, Pat. So when you, I think, said
Yeah.
that, you probably got a lot of people's attention. That we do have a really good offer then if you want to continue using Incisive in the Member Savings Center, which I posted. But obviously Pat's free offer for a limited time is a great way to test it out, and we encourage you to do that.
let me see what. So I just clicked on deactivated it. Interesting.
Yep. So
We will make sure we get that that Pat gets that reactivated, and if not,
I will reactivate that within the hour.
If we have an issue, we will share a new link with the group if we have to. But hopefully, Pat can just sort of fix that.
I will fix it. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. I don't think we have any other questions. Do you see any, Pat? Or I mean, Jim? Is there?
No, I think we're good. Looks like we've got a couple of people going to try it. So I've used it as well. It's pretty fascinating. It checks a lot of things. Very detailed. Very detailed.
Like I said, it probably costs about the same as 30 minutes of your life. So it's well worth it.
Yeah. So thanks, Pat. Thanks, Jim, for being here. We very much appreciate it.